Hey everybody, it's your boy Vape Nationalist on Reddit. I was the guy that posted the watermelon patch political compass meme about a month and a half ago or so, and this is like take five. I keep leaving out information, but one of the main reasons that I haven't posted an update yet, and I'd intended to earlier, but compared to like corn and even to a lesser extent, like my cucumbers and especially my pumpkins and summer squash, I really have just had the worst luck with watermelons. And here's the same angle as the picture that I posted. So we have lib left is down there in that corner, and like off right is up there. And at one point when they'd first started sprouting, I had uh, every single mound except for, I believe, off center never produced anything, but every other mound had at least one or two just sprouted. And now, a few weeks later, I'm down to just two, and at the risk of being accused of agenda posting, those two are off right, which is still quite small for having planted it a month and a half ago, and center right, growing here off the side of the mound, and which is also very small. And I think the main reason is that just where I'm at geographically compared to places like southeastern Virginia and the coastal Carolinas and Georgia and pretty much all of Florida and like southern Alabama and places that watermelon's grown successfully commercially. Um, I think that I'm just at too high of an elevation for these plants to really thrive. Um, and then what ended up killing off the majority of these other ones, I started having this brownish rot appear on the fringe of pretty much all of them. And this was at a point, I assumed it was just mild dehydration. And this was at a point where there was like 10 days of rain on the forecast, just consistent rain. And I said, well, that's okay. That's a problem that'll solve itself. And towards the end of that period of time, I came down to check on these plants, and most of them, these two, were clinging to life. I think lib left was clinging to life and had but was really struggling and ended up dying, and the rest of them were either dying or dead. And around this time, I talked with a neighbor of mine, and he said, no, dude. He came down and looked at him. He said, no, dude, that wasn't dehydration. That was a fungal infection. And so I purchased fungicide here. But being an inexperienced gardener as I was, I didn't know what I was looking at. And I guess that and one thing I'll mention though before anybody gets too excited, these quadrants haven't won, because I included the caveat on the original post. I said, that in order for any quadrant to win, the mound would have to actually produce melons, and I'm skeptical just because of the size these are compared to my more successful plants. Like this is the summer squash here. I just don't think that the watermelons are necessarily going to produce anything, and I've still been continuing to water and occasionally fertilize, and of course weed, and I've been taking care of these plants just in case I'm wrong. But this kind of segues me, I think, successfully into kind of an overarching point that I wanted to include with this video. Hey, Hash Brown. Which was, I see a lot of people on political subs in particular advocate for gardening, and I think for a lot of good reasons. You see a lot of people kind of see it as an anti-consumeristic habit to be in, to produce your own food, and I think that's true. And you also see a lot of people who are maybe concerned about the ability of like these large scale supply chains to continue to successfully provide people with food, especially in like cities, for instance, and uh, with the political atmosphere becoming more and more charged, and uncertain. I think there is some truth to that, and as a result, one thing that I want to mention is, especially if you're of the latter mindset and you see yourself as somebody who wants to start gardening for that reason, I really wouldn't wait until the world's on fire or whatever, situation you're worried about to occur before you start to try to learn. Because not that gardening is incredibly difficult, but there is, as with anything else, there's a learning curve, and there's just so many things that I either kind of lucked out on, or else things like not knowing enough about what crops really thrive in my climate that I really didn't know a lot about. And as a result, this kind of what I kind of think of as like a beta test garden that I'm doing right now is maybe suffered because of some of the gaps in my knowledge. And that's kind of, you really want to go ahead and start as soon as possible. And I'll give you some examples of things that I'm talking about. Whenever you start weeding, you'll realize that there are some weeds that really aren't that detrimental, that you just want to kind of keep out of your garden, just because to keep it looking nice, and to keep them from taking too many nutrients away from your plants. But then there are some, like this guy here, this little vine here, that are more predatory, and they can choke out your plant. And this specific type of vine, with these this one's kind of folded up, but they're kind of spade-shaped leaves, like you see down here. This is kind of a big one to be concerned about just in the specific area that I'm at. And another thing that I would have done differently, if I could just go back and restart this here, is whenever I tilled this soil, I would have been sure to sow into the soil as I till it fertilizer. And you can either produce your own fertilizer from composting, or else you can buy like a 10-10-10 NPK mix, which it's 10-10-10 means an even ratio of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium sulfate are the three nutrients. And you can different mixtures of those you can also buy for different kinds of plants. Might prefer maybe more potassium or something, but 10-10-10 is good for just generally trying to provide nutrients for a garden that you're going to grow a variety of crops in. And I didn't know that, and I didn't find out until after I tilled and planted. And I've been applying some of that fertilizer on top, but it's just not as effective as if you sow it into the soil, like what I'm talking about. And another big thing that I lucked out on, because my roommate knew about this and told me, was because of where I'm at, and I'll try to get you a good visual. I'm kind of downhill and kind of in a bowl. And if I hadn't known about drainage and dug this channel, a bunch of my plants would have ended up underwater. So you want to make sure that you have good drainage, for instance. And there's just enough of a learning curve where if you're serious about getting into gardening, you can go ahead and start, as soon as you can. And you'll learn a lot your first year. And it's a rewarding hobby, and I've had a really good time doing it. And hopefully I've kind of encouraged some other people to get started. And even if you're not interested in gardening, hopefully you got a kick out of the original post and you thought it was funny. And one thing I'll leave you guys with, just so if nothing ends up growing or producing anything, you feel like there will have been a takeaway from all of this, was I told someone in the comments of the original post, I said if no mound succeeds in producing any melons, the correct interpretation will be that public policy is ineffective in improving the human condition. So there's still a takeaway from all of this, I guess. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will update whenever there's anything worth saying again. And take care.